Throughout time, people across the world told each other tales of how they came to be, of heroes and monsters, romance and tragedy, death and rebirth. Mythology helped shape the ancient world, explaining the unexplainable. This is Mythology Unleashed. Long ago in a far-off kingdom, there lived a merchant, his wife, and their daughter, Vasilisa. When the girl turned 8 years old, her mother grew gravely ill and would soon perish. On her deathbed, Vasilisa's mother gave her her parental blessing and departing gift, a tiny little Montanka doll. But this was no mere toy for a child. She instructed her daughter to always take care of the doll, to keep it secret from all, even her beloved father, and whenever the girl should find herself in times of trouble or grief, to give the doll some food, and it will be there to offer advice, offer comfort, and help her solve her problems. With these last words, Vasilisa's mother had died. The girl did as her mother instructed her, and gave the doll some food, and as if by some magic, the doll offered comforting words to help the girl through her loss. After a period of mourning, one that lasted longer than anyone had realized, the merchant began to consider remarrying, not only for the sake of companionship, but for the sake of Vasilisa. He had a number of suitors, being a kind and handsome man for his years, but he soon set his eyes on a lovely widow with 2 daughters of her own, just a little older than Vasilisa herself. By his way of thought, he believed that she would have had the experience to be a superb mother to his own daughter. But after he had married her, she would prove herself to be anything but a loving mother. Whenever he was not around, the merchant's new wife was cruel to Vasilisa. The girl's beauty and abnormally kind heart, both of which seemed to grow with each passing day, earned her the admiration of all in the village, and it drove her envious stepmother and stepsisters to the point of irrational rage. And so while not in the presence of the merchant, the wicked stepmother tormented Vasilisa every day with copious amounts of labor, hoping the strain would cause her to shrink, turn gaunt, and that the sun and the wind would drain the light from her eyes. But despite her stepmother's best efforts, Vasilisa only seemed to grow prettier and happier with each passing day, while her stepfamily seemed to only grow uglier with how bitter they were. They were perplexed. How could she possibly endure such a daily workload and not suffer in the least? The truth of the matter was Vasilisa was helped every day by her mother's doll, whom she would give her meager rations and who would help her with her monumental daily tasks. Years had passed, and Vasilisa came to womanhood and would gain a new name among the townsfolk, Vasilisa the Beautiful. Soon suitors were lined up for her hand in marriage, but her stepmother, angrier than ever, refused to let her marry before either of her own daughters. Sometime later, the merchant had to attend business far away, and would be gone for a long time, but promised he would return before too long had passed. During his absence, the family had moved to a new house, one that was uncomfortably close to a massive, dense forest, one so thick that it was dark even at midday, and somewhere, deep within those trees, lived Baba Yaga, the cannibal witch of the woods, whose magical prowess and barbaric cruelty were widely known and widely feared by the countryside. Naturally, Vasilisa's cruel stepmother sent her into those cruel woods practically daily to forage for mushrooms, herbs, and greens, and just maybe, the evil witch would catch her and devour her. But Vasilisa was perpetually kept safe thanks to the doll, who guided her through the dark woods and away from Baba Yaga. Autumn came, and the disgruntled stepmother changed tactics, doling out evening chores to the three girls, one to weave lace, one to knit stockings, and Vasilisa to spin flax. She then doused each of the fires within the house, leaving only one lit candle for the three girls before retiring to bed. As the candle burned up, one of the stepsisters took the tongs to correct the lamp as her mother instructed, and as if by chance, she put out the candle. Vasilisa's stepsisters turned on her and forced her out of the hut and to fetch fire from the evil witch of the woods. With some words of comfort and encouragement from her fed doll, Vasilisa ventured forth deep into the dark forest in search of a place where no one returns from. As the girl ventured and the dawn approached, she soon encountered a rider dressed entirely in white garments, and the horse he rode upon, and the horse's harness, were likewise as white as snow. As the rider sped past Vasilisa, the dawn had begun to break. A short while later, Vasilisa was met by another rider, this time clad entirely in red, and astride a great steed who was as red as fire. And as the rider sped past Vasilisa, the sun had fully risen. After traveling through the day, by evening she came upon a great hut that stood upon chicken legs, and was surrounded by a fence composed entirely of human bones, the posts of which were topped by human skulls. Vasilisa was stunned with horror, and stood stock still, when all of a sudden, a third rider galloped past her, this one garbed entirely in black, and sitting upon a powerful black horse. The rider leapt over the bone fence, and vanished as quickly as he had arrived, and in that moment, night had fallen, and the eyes of the skulls glowed with eerie and powerful light. Vasilisa was terrified, too scared to run, and before she could even gather a complete thought, a loud, crashing racket came from the forest, and Baba Yaga appeared, riding in her mortar bowl. Smelling the blood and flesh of a human girl, Baba Yaga demanded Vasilisa to explain why anyone would be mad enough to venture into the mouth of certain death. Bowing low, Vasilisa explained to the witch her task to obtain fire for her stepfamily. And so Baba Yaga offered the girl a bargain. If she could complete a handful of tasks in service to the witch, she would send her home with fire. But if she were to fail any of the appointed tasks, then Baba would kill her and eat her. The next morning, after the white and red riders had rode through the glade, Baba Yaga commanded Vasilisa to clean the hut, clean the yard, wash the dishes, wash the laundry, cook dinner, and to take a quarter of wheat from the bunker and clean it from black bits, all before she returns that evening, lest Vasilisa become Baba's dinner. The witch left the girl to her tasks, and with the help of her mother's doll, Vasilisa succeeded in completing all of her day's chores before the Black Rider rode through and Baba Yaga returned. Baba was both shocked and disappointed, but shrugged it off, and she called to her faithful servants 3 pairs of disembodied hands to grind the wheat and take them out of sight. The next day the same thing happened. Baba Yaga left early in the morning after the first two riders ran past, and commanded Vasilisa to do the same chores, but this time to separate poppy seeds from grains of soil. And just as before, Vasilisa and the doll managed to finish the tasks within record time, much to the shock and disappointment of Baba Yaga upon her return following the Black Rider, who once again called to her faithful servants to squeeze oil from the poppy this time. That night at dinner, Baba Yaga invited the scared girl to a conversation, offering to answer any questions she may have, though warning her that not every question leads to good results. So Vasilisa inquired about the 3 mysterious riders who venture through the forest the same time each day. Baba Yaga revealed to the girl that the White Rider was the bright day, the sunrise. The Red Rider was the red sun, and the Black Rider was the dark night, all in service to the witch. Vasilisa was tempted to ask more about the 3 riders, as well as the disembodied hands at her beck and call, but the doll quivered in her pocket, warning her against doing so. But now it was the witch's turn to ask a question. Just how did a young country girl manage to complete such grand tasks in so short a time? Vasilisa replied that the blessing of her mother helps her through each day. And Baba Yaga was repulsed at the idea of the blessed standing in her presence, and she immediately freed Vasilisa from her service, gave her a skull lantern from the fence, and sent her away. Vasilisa ventured forth back home, the light of the skull illuminating her path through the darkness, and only extinguishing during the daylight. When she at last came upon her stepfamily's hut, Vasilisa considered throwing the skull away, but a dull voice emanating from the glowing object urged her to bring it inside. Vasilisa's stepfamily greeted her warmly, the first time ever, as no fire or candle lit within the hut could stay lit. Even when borrowed from a neighbor, flames never lasted beyond the threshold. But perhaps the fire of Baba Yaga's skull could hold out. No sooner was the skull brought into the living room that the eyes of the skull glowed brightly, staring hard into the stepfamily and burning them where they stood, until nothing was left but a pile of ash. Vasilisa was free from her wicked stepfamily, and she buried the skull deep within the earth, per the skull's instructions, and left for the capital city, where she may find her father. During her time in the capital, Vasilisa lived with a kindly old widow, spinning flax into yarn, and yarn into the finest of fabrics, with no shortage of help from the magic doll. Vasilisa's fine fabrics eventually caught the eye of the Tsar, and he demanded to meet the talented seamstress. Vasilisa appeared before the Tsar, and for the both of them, it was love at first sight. In what seemed like no time at all, Vasilisa and the Tsar were happily married, and what's more, her father at last returned to her, and so Vasilisa the Beautiful lived happily for the rest of her days, and always by her side was the magic doll, always there for her.